Hi everyone and welcome back. This is a short tip and a response to a number of questions I get on how to scale up or scale down a recipe. So if someone finds a recipe online, particularly my recipes and my videos, for example, they want to know how to downsize them to fit their brew house setup. So if they want to go down to down to 3 gallons from a 5-gallon recipe, or if they want to scale it up from a 5 to a 10-gallon recipe, it's really quite simple. You take the recipe and you first multiply it by your new batch size. So if you're downscaling or downsizing, let's say you want to go from a 5-gallon recipe down to a 3-gallon recipe, you take the recipe amounts for the grains and the hops, and you multiply them by your new batch size, your new smaller batch size, and divide it by the original recipe batch size. So that gives you a fraction, right? So let's say, again, that you're going to scale down from a 5-gallon batch to a 3-gallon batch. You take the ingredients in terms of the pounds or kilograms of grain and hops, and you multiply it times 3, which is your new batch size, and divide it by the batch size on the recipe. So that would be, in this instance, 3/5, which would be about 0.6. Now that's your multiplication factor. You multiply that into your ingredients and you have your new quantities. All right, so now if you're going to do it going from to scale up from a batch size, it's the exact same thing. You take the grain amounts you have there, you multiply it by your new batch size, let's say 10 gallons, and you divide it by the recipe batch size, let's say 5 gallons. So that's a multiplication factor of 2, and you multiply all your grains and hops by that amount. And your other additions too, if you're adding, let's say, like coriander or fruit or whatever. And when it comes to the water, well, the spreadsheet was designed specifically to calculate water additions. That was the original purpose of this spreadsheet, back when I wrote it, was to help me get into all grain brewing and do all the water calcs for me. So let it do its work for you. Walk through your recipe, scale it up or scale it down, and when you enter into the brew house tab to set up your brew house, now since you're downscaling or upscaling, your brew house values are going to be much different than what I have in my recipes by default. So you need to enter in, if you haven't already, all the values for your mash tun size, your boil kettle size, and your target batch size. So your smaller number or your larger number, along with your evaporation rates and other variables, right? And this will all just calculate all your mash additions, your strike water additions, your pre-boil volume totals, everything all for you. That was the original purpose of this spreadsheet. Now, when this is all done, it's very important to check your outputs, because that's how you know if the recipe was scaled up properly or scaled out properly, because this is not a linear process from start to finish. I mean, it's largely linear. I mean, you could quite easily take a batch and double it and get close to the outputs, but they will be off a little bit. This is not a completely linear process. So what you can do is sort of a rough order of magnitude. You scale up or scale down your recipe by what I just told you to do, depending on your size, right? And then you check your outputs, like your alcohol by volume, your IBUs, and your gravities. And if those don't match up with the original recipe, then something's amiss, right? And it could be your math, it could be your brew house setup, or it could be just because this is not a truly linear process. It could have deviated a little bit. So at this point, it's up to you to decide, is that good enough for you? Just increasing the ingredients and walking away and having those little, like the original gravity not being exactly right. It's up to you. If you want to fix it, then go back and tweak it a little bit by changing the grain amounts or the hop additions, depending on if it's an IBU calc, for example, to your liking. That's basically the gist of how to scale up and scale on a recipe. It's actually straightforward. So I hope you found this helpful. If so, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed. Comment down below if you think you must or have a question about this. Let me know. And other than that, I will talk to you all next time.